Hello, lords and lovelies, and welcome back to the Knights of the Round podcast with me, Ravah, and my handsome co-host, Arthur.
Hello.
If you are tuning in, we are continuing our discussion on FullMetal Alchemist in the definitive FullMetal Alchemist podcast. No, you don't have to go back and look for any other podcasts about which of the Fullmetal series is better. Just watch this one. This is the definitive one because our answers are right. I'm kidding.
This is technically part 2. We there was just so much that we wanted to talk about. We couldn't fit it into one singular episode. So if you haven't seen part 1, go back and watch it. Obviously, spoiler warnings and trigger warnings at the beginning of that. We're talking about some pretty heavy stuff, and we're very much not even caring about spoilers as far as the story is concerned. So go back and watch part 1 if you haven't. Let's jump into it with one of my favorite characters, Mustang.
So we're gonna talk. We've got a couple of different topics we're gonna talk about today. We'll get to Mustang in a second, but I think we're gonna finish. We're gonna finish our character discussion. We wanted to talk about character deaths because those are very different, and then talk about the endings of both series because it would not be justice if we didn't talk about both series. So
Well, both endings.
both series endings. Thank you. So okay, we will talk about Mustang now.
Thank you.
So you wanted to talk about it, so you start.
So Mustang is a pretty interesting character. In a lot of respects, he's very similar between the two. But I think the 2003 version of Mustang really does, I think, give us a lot more of a gripping story with him. Obviously, a lot of things are similar. He's a lieutenant colonel. And
His personality is the same.
His personality is the same. He's a lieutenant colonel in the military. Obviously he's a flame alchemist. But certain specific aspects of his story change, and I think that really does create, in my opinion, a more realistic and grounded character from the 2003 version as opposed to Brotherhood. Not that the Brotherhood version is bad, but I enjoy seeing as cruel as it sounds, the more tortured Mustang from 2003 than Brotherhood.
I remember when we were watching the original for the first time. So one of the big differences between the original and Brotherhood as regards to Mustang is that in the original, Mustang is the one that kills Winry Rockbell, the other Elric brothers' childhood friends. He's the one that kills her parents, and it becomes this dilemma of I was just following orders, which is a very realistic, like real world kind of scenario of, I was just following orders. Whereas in Brotherhood, it's Scar that kills Winry's parents after they are trying to help him after he's attacked by Kimberly. And it becomes more of her journey to forgive him for what he did, as well as him realizing that all of that death and destruction can't continue. But in regards to Mustang, I remember there's a particular scene in the original where he's sitting there with his gun, and he actually puts it in his mouth, and then Mace Hughes convinces him not to do it. I remember how much you loved that scene when we first saw it.
It was so powerful because, let's be honest, in a lot of not just in anime, but a lot of storytelling in general, when's the last time you had a scene where somebody puts a gun in their mouth and their best friend has to talk them down from it? And it's so clear how torn up he is like, I was just following orders. I was a dog of the military. I committed these horrible atrocities. And then this moment towards kind of like the middle to later end of the 2003 series, where Winry finds out that it wasn't some random soldier who killed her parents. It was Mustang, this man that she's come to admire and respect and rely upon and look up to in certain degrees. He's the man who murdered her parents. And it just, you could see it on her face. It shatters her worldview. Up is down, left is right, cats are dogs. Nothing makes sense at that point because, how could this man who committed such a horrible act still be this good man? And I think Mustang asks that question of himself all the time as well. It's like, I have done these horrible, atrocious things. And admittedly, the Brotherhood version of him also goes, I have committed these horrible, atrocious things. But it is such a more personal punch. I've killed a whole bunch of nameless Ishvalans versus I killed the parents of the main character's love interest. That is such a more personal, more direct punch to the stomach, and it hits so much harder.
I totally agree. Though there is one thing that I think stands out, and I think we would have an outcry if we don't mention it with Mustang,
Mm-hmm.
and that is his revenge arc. There are two particular
Mm.
scenes. I would give it to the original Mustang, but there's two particular scenes that make me kind of question that, and that would be him healing Lust. That whole arc where he kills Lust, we think Havoc has died, and Havoc is becomes paralyzed after that, and him just destroying and killing Envy, or attempting to kill Envy, because he doesn't actually. I don't think I'd have to go back and remember. I don't think he actually ends up killing. No, he doesn't kill Envy because that's actually a big part of his character. He reduces him to his little worm
A little wormy form. Mm.
But I think that that's the important moment of stopping him before he does that. Getting his revenge for Hughes. Because
I think it's Scar that actually ends up killing Envy, if I'm not mistaken, in Brotherhood.
why
But
can't I
Envy
remember?
definitely dies in
Oh
Brotherhood.
yeah. He dies in both series. It's just
Mhm.
more convoluted in the original.
Mm.
He goes through the gate to find Hohenheim
Is a
and
whole
does all
thing.
that stuff. But
no, like stopping. I sorry, no, I'm gonna interrupt, but yeah, you're right. Them stopping Mustang before he kills Envy out of just pure unadulterated rage, the revenge for the death of Hughes, the man who saved his life, uh, his best friend. No, that revenge arc is so powerful in Brotherhood.
Mhm.
You're right.
And it's almost like in the original, he doesn't want revenge on the specific person. He wants revenge on the state and the government that caused this to happen,
Mhm.
especially when they find out the secret about the Fuhrer.
Mm-hmm.
Him being a homunculus. But I really like that point that you made where you were talking about, him being that more grounded character in the original. And so there is a really good moment in Brotherhood that does show the full backstory of Hughes, Mustang, and a little bit of Armstrong and Kimberly as soldiers during the Ishval War.
I love that.
But like, I love how you put that really well. Yeah, Mustangs killed like lots of hundreds and thousands of innocent children and people and men and women and all kinds of things. But yeah, it's not personal
Mhm.
because it's kind of like you've said something similar about Attack on Titan. It kind of seemed for a while just war is bad.
Don't do war.
Don't do war.
But like to tie it in like directly to the main character like that, and this character, Winry is this can do no wrong character. Everybody loves Winry.
Mhm.
And shout out to the two people in the audience that actually don't like Winry. But to have it tie so directly to her, and honestly, I will say this about Mustang in both series is that his characterization and his personality is kept so consistent. I could totally see that these are just alternate universe versions of the exact same character. I
The
could
Full
totally
Metal
see
multiverse.
that Brotherhood Mustang, if he had gone into that tent before Scar had, and he had got his orders to kill the Rock Bells and had gone through with it, he would have ended up exactly like the 2003
Mhm.
Mustang. Like they are so consistent in every other aspect of his personality. That one singular event created the two characters that we know, or the two versions of the character that we know.
It's almost like the writers and the directors of the original series, that was the character almost that they understood the most.
Oh, totally.
Because, like you said,
him
he gets
and
more.
Edward, I think, are the two characters. I'm sorry.
He gets more opportunities to show himself in Brotherhood because he's he gets more screen time.
It's a
But
longer
that series
series.
gets a longer series. But they really understood his character and did it really well.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, I think his relationship with Hughes is better explained in the original.
Oh yeah,
Brotherhood just kind of was like, yeah, you've seen the original. You know that these are good characters.
Good friends,
You know
good
when
buds.
Hughes dies is sad Mustang Engie. But his his relationship with Hughes is just much better, especially with that bonding moment of Hughes saying, talking him out of suicide by saying, if you want to fix this, we're going to change it from the bottom up, which he does still do in Brotherhood, but he does it after all of the devastation of war, rather than in that personal moment of convincing him not to kill himself.
Like if you really want to atone for what you've done, rewrite this country to one that will never force another officer to do what you did. Fix it from the inside. But if you kill yourself right now, some other lieutenant colonel somewhere else down the line will do the same thing again.
You know what else I think is interesting about Mustang is both series, and I don't think they couldn't have known how he ended up in the manga by the time the ending came out.
It wasn't out yet.
But they both end up losing partial or all of their eyesight. Because remember, he gets the eye patch after fighting the Fuhrer.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And then that's his price for committing, quote unquote, human transmutation to save Riza is he loses his vision at the end of Brotherhood. So do you think that has some kind of like symbolism or some kind of connection to a theme?
You could definitely read into it. Most certainly. You could definitely read into it.
Well, I'm asking you what you read into it.
Let me finish. Because, I mean, in one hand, yeah, he loses his eyesight in Brotherhood, but, like, it wasn't his choice to do that human transmutation. It was literally, he was forced into doing it. Meanwhile, I feel like him losing his eyesight in the 2003 version is a direct cost of him pursuing his goal. It literally took a piece of him, a very valuable piece of him. And if you think about the way he performs alchemy, he needs to be able to see what he's doing in order to perform. So not only is it taking away his alchemy, not only is it taking away his vision, it's taking away his alchemy, his main weapon, the thing that caused all the destruction in the first place. He had to sacrifice his power, that he desperately struggled for, in order to become the person he needed to be in order to rule properly.
So last question about Mustang, and then we'll move on to our final characters and other things. Which do you think was better? The fact that Mustang is the one that confronts and kills the Fuhrer, or that Scar is the one that confronts and kills the Fuhrer?
Ooh.
Kills or just uses up his life count and he dies peacefully.
He uses up sent wave after wave of my own men against them. Honestly, personally, I feel like the Fuhrer ties more directly into Mustang's backstory than he does into Scar's backstory. If Scar was going to kill anybody to get his revenge in Brotherhood, it would have been Kimberly. I wanted to see Scar versus Kimberly, and like
we saw it.
We saw it, but like that's not how Kimberly dies. Scar doesn't get a chance to avenge the massacre of his people by killing Kimberly. I think the Fuhrer, being the man that ordered that massacre, that forced Hughes and Riza and all these characters that we come to know, including Mustang, into committing these atrocities. It needed to be Mustang who confronts him to go, you forced us into committing your atrocities. This is the price that you're going to pay for it. We're going to kill you for it. I love that fight with Fuhrer and Mustang. They're in this really claustrophobic, really small room. So the Fuhrer actually has the advantage because, yes, Mustang has good control of fire, but what if it spreads? There's a lot of wood in here. And I think he's also realizing that, I'm at the disadvantage, but if I burn up in this room, then that's just what's going to end up happening. That's just how I die. And he went into that fight totally okay with dying.
Right.
No. So I think we got to read
the point here.
I say point 2003. He got his revenge. He completed his character arc. He has the more humanized and personal touch and the backstory with Winry's parents. I'd say point 2003.
I can't decide. I kind of want to give it to both.
How about 2 to 2003 and 1 to Brotherhood?
Oh yeah, that's right. Because we did that.
Because we did that with Hohenheim. I think?
the antagonist.
The antagonist. That's right.
Okay, we're gonna do that because we can.
We're gonna do that because we can.
And lastly, we cannot talk about FullMetal characters without talking about the Elric brothers. Because they are the main characters. We haven't talked about them really at all, except for their relation to the two other characters. We haven't talked about them as specific characters. So one of the things is talking about some more FMA lore. The original voice actor for Alphonse in the English dub, which that's the one I watched. Come at me, sub watchers. I watched the dub for both, whatever.
The dubs are great.
But it was Aaron Dismute in the original. By the time, the 2009/2010 dub came out, he had done what happens to most boys as they grow older. His voice had changed.
Mm-hmm.
Alphonse is supposed to be a 10-year-old. So he
He
can't
did
go
not
in
sound like
sounding
a
like this.
10-year-old in 2009.
So they have of course to recast it. And I do believe Aaron Dismuke does have a little couple of cameo voice
in
acting
Brotherhood, yeah, he
appearances,
does.
which is great because I love him.
He is so precious.
I would highly recommend if you guys can find any episode commentaries. There's one
Fuck it.
with him and some of the other characters commenting on the episode from the original about Lab 5. It's great. I would highly recommend watching that.
It's genuinely hilarious. You actually get a little bit of a look into some of the technical aspects, like the recording of the voices and how they made them all sound like they were standing in suits of armor. It's genuinely hilarious.
But so this one is actually my hardest one to decide.
Yeah.
Because like Mustang, the writer and director of the original 3, the 03 version, really understood those two characters. And I don't think character-wise, there's not really, I don't think, a lot of differences between the two series and those two characters.
They're really similar. And like I mentioned with Mustang, like you could totally see how these characters, like one or two events different, and they could swap places. I mean, they are very similar. Let's start with Edward Elric. So actually one of the notes that I had written down is the fact that to me, the biggest difference between 2003 and Brotherhood is that the 2003 Edward does not ever learn to trust adults. He does not ever learn to trust or rely upon anybody other than Alphonse. It is him and Al against the world. He goes into the fight against Dante with just the two of them. He doesn't ever really feel like he could trust. Like, there's this respect for Mustang, but there's also you are a dog of the military. I will never trust you, even though he doesn't actually realize that Mustang killed Winry's parents. And one of my favorite scenes in 2003 is when they finally find out about Maze Hughes being murdered, and the fact that Mustang had kept that from them the entire time. Of course, this was like 30 episodes after his death. Like,
yeah, it's towards the end.
It's towards the end of the series.
It is after the brothers are. It's actually after Lior.
It's after Lior. It's after Al becomes the Philosopher's Stone. Like just before they go fight Dante. That's when he finds out, and his immediate reaction is, "I'm gonna kill that bastard. I'm gonna go kill Mustang. How dare he not tell me?" And it's such this emotional, heartfelt scene as this the only adult in the entire series that they learned that was a good man that they could trust explicitly. He's been dead, and Mustang has been hiding it from them this entire time. Oh man, Edward went on a rampage, and it's such a heartbreaking scene. Versus in Brotherhood, where they find out like one or two episodes afterwards, he's like, "Oh man, that sucks. Oh man, I'm so sad." Versus him absolutely going blind with rage and grief in the original. Absolutely, it tears me up, and that feeds into why I think Edward just does not trust grown-ups. Every single time he's relied on an adult in the 2003 show, they let him down in a spectacular fashion. Whereas by the end of Brotherhood, he realizes, I cannot do this without other people in my life.
Well, I think that goes along with part of his character is everybody's constantly telling him to grow up. And I believe he has a line where it's like, well, if that's what it means to be a grown up, then I don't want to be one. I remember that. I don't remember. I want to say that's a line in the original. But yeah, you're right. He can't do anything. Even when they're in the north at Briggs, he almost dies, and without the assistance of the Chimeras, he would have.
Yeah,
because he falls in a hole and gets impaled to the side. But I think that's part of his character arc, and that leads more towards his happier ending.
Yeah,
there at the end.
Oh, I totally agree. Good point.
Is that he does overcome a lot of that. He does learn to trust, whereas in the original, he does. Yeah, you're right. He doesn't, and I think that better ties to his ending in that series because he doesn't really have that happy ending. He does get reunited with his brother, but it's not all they ever wanted. It's not a perfect
happy ending. It's about as happy of an ending that they could have gotten,
right,
given the steps that they took to get there. No, that's a fantastic point, actually. But it really does make a lot more sense when you look at the villain that they're fighting in Brotherhood. They would never have been able to beat Father unless they brought everybody together. They brought the Chimeras together. They brought basically all these state alchemists that they've befriended along the way together. Greed, join their team.
My boy.
No, Greed's a fantastic character. We love him. And they still barely scraped out a win.
Mhm.
Barely. And I mentioned it in part one. I'm gonna say it again, but like, bring one or two extra people to that fight with Dante, and they would have swept it. I mean, it was a close fight, just as them. But bring Armstrong and Mustang to that fight, and it's a no brainer. They're gonna sweep. It's gonna be. They're gonna dog walk on Dante. Dante is not the same level of threat as Father is, but because of the limitations that Ed had put on himself, the fact that he could not trust another adult, he's like, the only person I can rely on is me, and that gets him in the deep trouble that it does when he realizes that he and Al cannot defeat Dante, just them, and they're just barely able to scrape out a quote unquote win.
And I think this, the final note on this is that Edward Elric in both series, how he grows and develops fits the tone of the series. He stays that more somber protagonist and doesn't get that happy ending because that's not the tone and the type of series the original is.
Oh yeah.
You don't really think that it's kind of like very Game of Thrones-esque. You don't think it's going to be a happy ending. Whereas in Brotherhood, he is more of a shonen style protagonist. He's a very complex social shonen protagonist. He's actually my favorite shonen protagonist, but he still kind of gets that shonen ending. He gets the girl. He does, but he still sacrifices, which fits with a lot of the themes of the show. Nothing can be gained without sacrifice. But the way that he develops fits the tone of Brotherhood. If he didn't have a happy ending in Brotherhood, it wouldn't have fit with the type of show that had set up.
Right.
It set up all these obstacles and these hardships for the protagonist to overcome, and it does it in such a great way, and it's so compelling. But the ending Edward's ending specifically fits the type of show that Brotherhood was going for. So where are we putting this point?
Between the two of them, my heart absolutely takes me to 2003. Don't get me wrong. Again, Brotherhood, Edward Elric is really cool. You could totally, like I said, if one or two things change, they could swap places in an instant. But there are just so many like gripping moments involving Edward Elric that you just don't get the same level of emotion in Brotherhood. So I have to give the point to 2003.
I'm trying to do this without seeming biased because I do have a favorite of the two. And if you've watched other podcast episodes, I've actually said it before. I'm not going to say it now. So I'm going to give a point to each because I don't want to kind of, give my bias away. Though
Fair
I
enough.
encourage you to go watch other episodes of the Knights of the Round podcast so that you can find out what my favorite is, and then come back and finish this episode, of course.
So then, if we can't really come on an equal terms as far as the protagonist, let's talk about the deuteragonist. Let's talk about Alphonse Elric.
I'm sorry, I thought you said the dude protagonist, and I was like, where are we going with this? What are we talking about now?
The deuteragonist, Alphonse Elric.
I would still consider Alphonse to be a protagonist because he is still the character, one of the two characters that the story is told from. And I think actually Brotherhood does a better job of making him a protagonist because you do see there's a lot of Brotherhood actually where they're not together.
Yeah,
and so you get to see this series. They're like, hey, let's make him a for real protagonist where we show a lot of the story from Al's point of view.
No, that's a fair point. So I started off talking about Edward. You start off with Al.
So I want to give this point automatically to 2003 because Brotherhood cuts out my favorite line of all time from Alphonse Elric. And that's where Greed's men go to kidnap him from Dante's house. And they ask him, they're like, what? You're 15 now. You're supposed to be grown up. You know.
You're skipping the
Oh yeah, yeah,
context.
yeah.
They go to kidnap Al and like, you're coming with us. And I was, of course, a 10-year-old child. My sensei told me never to go with strangers.
And then the big ox guy, he's like, "You're 15 now. You should decide for yourself." And he goes, "You're right." Karate chops him.
Karate chops and knocks this dude clean out. I've decided not to go with strangers. Like.
That is my favorite line from Alphonse Elric of all time.
It is so
great.
funny. He just clean clocks this chimera out and goes, I've decided I'm not going with strangers. No, Alphonse is such a fun character in both shows. I mean, he does bring a lot of lighthearted levity to some more of the serious moments in the 2003. But then it dawns on you like, this is a child. This is a 10-year, or technically 15-year-old or so, whatever. Well, no, it had to have been he's like 12, I want to say, because he's a couple of years younger than Ed.
No, he's 1 year younger. He's
really?
because I remember this because in the very first episode when they're chasing each other through the sand, it says Edward Elric, older brother 15, Alphonse Elric, younger brother 14. But when he is put into the suit of armor, he is 10 years old. So he's basically frozen in time at 10, but he's still going through these experiences, but he's not getting to grow and change like he would if he had his normal body.
Right.
So that's kind of actually a really good comparison between the two characters is that Edward represents the kid who just wants to grow up. He wants to grow up real fast. I got to grow up. I got to grow up. I got to grow up. And all of the adults are like, no, you're still a kid. If you want to be a grown-up, act like a grown-up, make grown-up decisions. And Alphonse is very much he's still a child. He's trying to still be a child in this world and retain his childlike qualities, like saving cats, being kind to people, he not having the big fiery temper that his brother does. That's because they're supposed to be foil characters of each other.
And it works perfectly. But going back to what I was saying before is that it dawns on you in certain moments that like, this is a child. This is a child currently entangled in wars and murders and genocides. And this isn't something that you expect a teenager or a little kid in order to be able to understand, let alone handle. Like that's not a responsibility you give to them. And on the same hand where the adults are trying to keep them away from all this causes Edward to distrust adults, it creates this sense of we are in over our heads. I'm scared for Alphonse. So whereas it stokes the fires of Edward's anger, it makes Alphonse this even meeker than he already is.
Well, and you see him also as being almost too trusting. There's a really good comparison with the Chimera in 03, specifically Marta, Doroshay, and the Ox guy, who, I'm sorry, rest in peace, Ox guy. I don't remember your name. But he eventually comes to trust Marta, and she's the one in 03 who
the snake.
Yes, and she reveals to him that Fuhrer Bradley is a homunculus, but it's he. After a little bit, he trusts her, and Edward would have never.
He would no, absolutely.
He came into that place ready to bust heads and take names, whereas Al would have been the one. He's the talker. He's the one who wants to negotiate because he is the more trusting character. And you get I love the dynamic between Al and Marta in 03 that you don't get because she's killed in the same volume that she's introduced in, which I think was a mistake. You didn't let that relationship kind of develop out in Brotherhood.
No, the Marta's death. We'll save that. We'll save that because we're going to talk about character deaths later. Sorry, but no, the fact that Al has more time to get to know her in 03, and I think that 03 actually that's one of the things it does really well is that it lets you get to know these characters. You get to know Hughes. You get to know Marta. You get to know a lot of these other characters that kind of get this passing treatment almost in Brotherhood, even though it has more time. It's weird. It's like all the characters that didn't get attention in 03 got tons of attention in Brotherhood, but all the characters that got tons of attention in 03 got almost no screen time, or at least not enough of screen time, in my opinion, in Brotherhood. But Alphonse he's pretty similar. Just like you couldn't really give the point either way for Ed, I can't really give the point either way for
I can't either,
Alphonse.
because I really like
Other than that one point for I decide to not go with strangers.
that's one of my bonus round points. But because I really like Alphonse, his his interaction with Pride when they get stuck in that sphere, and Pride SOSs to get himself broken out. So I think there's still a lot of that there. I can't give the point for Al. They're too similar in both series, and I don't think one series did Al better than the other. I really
think
don't.
they really understood Al in both, and so
Double
1 point
pin,
each.
1 point each. All right, so let's move on to one of our last talking points, which is character deaths.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So then I'm going to say it. I think I'm just going to open up and say it. I think 03 did character deaths better. Period. With a T. I think the big quintessential character deaths I think are done better in 03. And it's the same thing that I've said a couple of times, is that the three big character deaths in both series that help build up Edward and Alphonse are Trisha, Maze Hughes, and Nina Tucker.
Yes.
And Brotherhood does all three. As you've seen the original, you know that these characters die, but we got to include them because it's part of the story. But if we're looking at it as a standalone series, you can't do that.
No, you can't. Yes, to a certain degree, it's a remake of a remake. And so, obviously, most people are going to be familiar with the source material. But you can't just write that off of, well, everybody's going to see it. Because actually, a lot of people watched Brotherhood first. They did not watch the 2003. They did not read the manga. Their introduction was through Brotherhood. So you have to look at it through the lens of, if you came into it blind, not knowing about Nina Tucker, not knowing about Mace Hughes, not knowing about Trisha Elric, which one of these two versions absolutely hits you the hardest? And you're right, it's 03. It's not even close. The fact that you have like 16 episodes in the 03 version to get to know Mace Hughes and his
25 actually
25 episodes,
because that's when he dies, is in episode 25,
and like his quirky behavior, his love for his family. You meet his daughter and his wife, and like he is like so cool and sweet and caring, and he's still also kind of a badass at the same time. You actually get to see him fight effectively against those guys on the train. And again, like I said, he's the only adult that Ed ever really trusts, like other than his own mother. There's no adult that ever like makes that go.
And his teacher.
And his teacher Izumi, but
she's like his mom.
They have a weird relationship where she beats the shit out of him. Oh man, we didn't get a chance to talk about one of my favorite scenes, but focusing on this, the fact that you get these 25 episodes to get to know this character, and then he dies, and the whole burial scene, mommy, why are they putting daddy in the ground? Every single time it cried, and that was the exact same point in both 2003 and in Brotherhood, where I just stopped watching the show.
But we were surprised. He was surprised to find out when we were watching Brotherhood, Mace Hughes dies in like episode 8 or 9 of well over 60 episodes in Brotherhood, and he was. Whereas like, you get half of the series, a little less than half of the series
with Mace Hughes in 2003, whereas he's a passing character almost in Brotherhood. He does not get anywhere near the screen time. You don't really get as much time to just get close to him, and then when he dies, it affects you so much less because now you know in the 2003 version what he's really leaving behind. And
Ed and Al are actually a part of the birth of his child.
Yeah.
Because
his second child.
No, his only child. He only has Alicia.
No, because Alicia had already been born by the time.
No, she hasn't.
Are you sure?
So it is in the same arc. So it's in the alchemy exam arc when she's younger. She they're with Gracia, Hughes' wife, and they help her give birth to Alicia. So that again is that more personal connection. And that's the first time that, yes, it's a very important moment because that's the first time Edward does alchemy without a circle. He's able to heat the water because they're like, the water's cold, and he's able to heat it without using a transmutation circle. Whereas, you don't really get that drawn out personal connection of, oh, Ed and Al have known this character for years and they've been an integral part of each other's lives for both years. Are you fact checking me?
Yeah, so when we first see her, she's 3 years old. That's when Winry Rockbell goes to you're thinking about when they were helping that one woman that's stuck in the mountain in the Rock City.
That's how they
arc.
do the same theme in Brotherhood. See, now I've got to look this up and try and talk at the same time because I know I'm right. But anyway, we'll look it up.
We'll look it up and we'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, it's me, Ravah. I have an encyclopedic knowledge of the original or of all things FullMetal Alchemist.
And
So
Arthur just foolishly tried to challenge her on that.
But no, we did end up looking it up, and it is at the birthday party that they try to throw for Ed, because in the original, actually, Ed and Alicia have the same birthday. I'm not sure if that's that way in Brotherhood. It's not really ever brought up, but I know a lot of mangakas do a lot of lore of, here's this character's birthdays and stuff, but they have the same birthday. So it establishes that personal connection of, hi, I helped deliver your
child into this world. And after that point, him and Hughes are like, well, you helped bring my daughter into this world. You are now forever in my heart. And then he dies.
So you also have, along those same veins, you have Nina and Alexander's. So they both have different purposes. I've come to think as I'm going through this.
Tell us.
Theirs is supposed to be a personal connection of, this is someone in the original of, this is someone we loved, another person we loved that we could not save, just like our mom. And that theme keeps coming up throughout the series. Whereas in Brotherhood, it's, I think, more supposed to establish who Scar is and that he will follow his quest no matter what. It also kind of does, actually, no, I think he's more merciful in the original, but it's more to set him up and just to show that bad things will happen to people. Death is blind. In Brotherhood, rather as a, hey, Ed and Al, this is a really important character to you that is now dead.
And I think mostly she's used as a symbol of, or at least Shao Tucker is used as a symbol of good men driven to desperation will do evil things. And that theme hits so much harder in the original than it does in Brotherhood. What?
Yeah, and I think it's more of a shows more of like how corrupt everything is in Brotherhood as that, that kind of thing. Whereas again, for them in the original, this is a character. So Nina in the original, they go to Central
in order
to take the alchemy exam. Both of them do, actually. Ed is 12, Al is 11, and they stay with the Tuckers. And it's actually, you can see through the visual storytelling that seasons pass. So they're there for several months. This is not just an exam that you study for at, until 3 a.m. and take.
Yeah, no.
And so they lived in this man's house for several months. They got this connection with Nina. She's there. She has the magic flowers line when he turns everything into, raining flower petals. She's there when they're giving birth, when they're helping Gracia give birth. So they have that personal connection so that when she dies and when the Ed has that moment of, Tucker tells him, you can't separate her. 1, you don't know how. And 2, the fusion is so complete. Ed has to come to the grips with that of, this is somebody else that I am too weak to save. And I couldn't save her.
I mean, I think it really boils down to that in the original, she's a character with relationships and connections. Whereas in Brotherhood, she's almost more of just a plot device to show us about chimeras. The fact that she's killed off in the same episode that she's introduced in Brotherhood, whereas you get like 3 or so episodes of her and Shao Tucker in the original that makes Shao Tucker's insanity when he turns her and Alexander into a chimera absolutely more heartbreaking, because now you've gotten to know him and this isn't a bad man really, but he got desperate and so he went insane.
Yeah.
And then you really get attached to this sweet little girl, only to watch her get turned into this monster. And I just love in both versions Ed going into a blind rage and beating the absolute dog shit out
And
of
it's a really cool point of animation in both because you
Chow.
watch him, he punches Shao Tucker with his right arm specifically, the one that's made of steel. And I think that's a choice on his part of, I want to hit you harder, and I know I can hit you harder if I hit you with my metal arm.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. You actually, when we watched it together, you noticed something that you didn't notice in your other 47,000 watches of this show was that the last words that Nina ever says to Ed is "Don't forget," because he makes a promise to like come back and they throw a party, and she said "Don't forget," and then he runs away.
Oh, no,
And
she goes to bed.
and then she goes to bed or whatever. And what is inscribed on the inside of Ed's pocket watch?
Yeah,
Don't forget.
Don't forget. Yeah, that's right. So it's one of those, I love watching things with Arthur because I noticed these things, and it was one of those me going, and he's like, what? And I was like, don't worry about it. I'll tell you later.
But I mean, like obviously, like you could just read the direct, read into that, and that's obviously don't forget because it's included with the date inscribed when they burn down their house. But I think it also really turns around, especially in '03. Don't forget about the people you couldn't save, about the things you couldn't do, about the burdens you now carry. '03 is just such a heavier and darker story that really does not let you forget the weight that these characters, the protagonists, are carrying with them the whole way through.
So one thing I'm going to give a point to Brotherhood for one character, and that's Envy. Envy's death is so much better in the original than it is in Brotherhood. In Brotherhood, he's kind of a...
Flip that, because you said you're going to give...
sorry, yeah. So his death is better because the fact that you find out in Brotherhood that he's envious of humans when he's at his basest, lowest form, and that's why he hates humans, is because he's envious, because he's envy of them. I think his death is so much better.
Oh man, it's so strong. It's so good.
Whereas he's just used for alchemy transmutation materials in the Conqueror of Shambhala.
No, it's not. His death is not done the justice that it deserves, especially how much they set him up, how he specifically hates Ed now, how he has this direct connection with them, and then they just kind of toss him to the side there at the end. And I'm like, no, like, what a great antagonist that is. What a great dark reflection of Ed that Envy is in the 2003 version, and then they waste that potential. But they give... I will, like you said, giving a point to Brotherhood. Giving a point to Brotherhood for Envy, and almost giving a point to Brotherhood for Greed as well, and the way he sacrificed himself.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Greed is my boy, and his death give Brotherhood that point.
But the same way, we've got to give at least 2 points to 2003 for Nina, for Hughes. Honestly, I want to give a point to the Fuhrer as well, because as we mentioned when we were talking about Mustang, is that final fight between Mustang and the Fuhrer really does bring Mustang's character arc full circle.
I don't know though, because I like his death in Brotherhood, that he dies with that really peaceful look on his face, because that's his final middle finger to everybody. It's like, yeah, I've committed all these atrocities, and I still died peacefully.
I died with a smile on my face.
I think that's really cool, because that also shows that, we don't always catch the bad guys. The bad guys don't always suffer. Sometimes they do die peacefully. So here's how I kind of want to end it. I want to talk about... I want to talk about the endings, and then I want to maybe do like a lightning round of Brotherhood did this better, the original did this better.
All right. So endings. Personally, and you and I have talked a little bit on this before, I like the Brotherhood ending better. I definitely like, I enjoy the darker tone overall of 2003 better, but the ending, the everybody gathering together, one last ditch effort to stop Father, him being undone by his hubris as truth consumes him, Ed and Al getting their bodies back, the desperate struggle to prevent them from losing their souls altogether. It's such a solid ending, and nothing made me scream, oh, holy shit, like when Father turns into this massive, gigantic creature and absorbs God. Absolutely, because I had never read or heard that whole part was a complete surprise
I'm
for me.
so glad.
Blew my mind.
Good job,
out of the water.
FMA. Good job, FMA community. We managed to save that spoiler for like 15 years.
Excellent job. The FMA community is solid about not spoiling anything. But no, like that scene blew me away. So cool. And I think that scene really helped cement Father as such a better antagonist to me than Dante. But it got the happy ending that I wanted the characters to get. They were finally able to have their piece. Everybody got more or less what they wanted, but they had to pay prices along the way.
Right, which goes with the whole opening of the show. Nothing can be gained without first giving something in return. That is alchemy's first law of equivalent exchange. So, yeah, and here's what I found when I've talked to people about this is that people who like happier endings, they like where all the loose ends are tied up. They like the original, the Brotherhood ending better. But people who don't mind more open-ended, oh, we could continue on from here, they like the Brotherhood ending better. And that's the biggest difference, is that a lot of the plot threads in Brotherhood are all tied up. And Edward does get his he does do the sacrifice, but what he gets for equivalent exchanges, he gets his happy ending. He gets his happy ending with Winry and their two little babies.
Oh my God, they're so cute.
Alphonse gets a girlfriend, which also makes me happy.
His declaration of love to Winry, though, I'll give you, half of my life and you give me half of yours. That's equivalent exchange. And Winry's like, that's stupid. Why don't I just give you all of my life and you give me all of yours?
Alphonse gets the girl. Well, it's implied. I like to think that him and May eventually get together.
I like to think that too, because May is so cute.
And I love her admiration of him.
May is
how
so
she's
cute.
like, I have to get him his body back because he might be hot.
And he turns out to be a handsome young man at the end of it.
You see Scar and Miles are working to rebuild the Ishvalan nation. There's just if you like those really good feel good endings, then Brotherhood has what I think is a more definitive ending, and I think it does, which in the next episode of the podcast, which fits more of the definitions of what makes a good ending.
Yes, absolutely. But again, to if you like more serious, like there is not always going to be a happy ending type stories, you're gonna like the 2003s better. There are so many characters that did not really get to fulfill their goals. They didn't get redeemed. They didn't get their chance at getting what they really wanted. Or if they did get it, they had to pay a heavy price in return.
And I think that fits with the realistic tone of the first one. It's kind of like the sorry kids, not everybody gets a happy ending. Mustang actually doesn't really get a definitive or a complete ending in either series. He kind of you find out in Brotherhood in the movie that he's like, I'm just going to be like a petty officer and, go up to the north.
Oh, that's sad. I wanted him to be
You've seen that in the Conqueror of Shambhala. That's
you
where
said
they
in
find
Brotherhood.
whoops. So the Brotherhood movie is not a continuation of the story.
Okay.
It's not.
Because I haven't seen the Brotherhood movie yet. I was like, damn it.
You kind of sort of see him maybe going back into the military in Brotherhood, but you don't really know if he's going to work up to his goal. He doesn't get that definitive ending like Ed and Al do. But I think that kind of works with his character.
And plus, becoming the leader of a nation of millions is not something that you do overnight. That's gonna take a while.
So I would agree with you. I would give the point to the Brotherhood ending.
All right, gotcha.
So now I kind of want to do a lightning round. Just kind of I think this series should get a point for this. Maybe not so much a discussion, just hey, we give a point to this for this. Because I could not do this podcast without giving a point to Brotherhood for bringing us Ling, who is one of my favorite characters.
Fun.
And the fact that they combine Ling and they bring back Greed, who's my favorite homunculus, and they kind of combine them together and give my boy Greed more screen time, but also sort of making him like his own character separate from Ling. Yes, I'm gonna give a point to Brotherhood for that.
I'm gonna give a point to Brotherhood for May because she's such a cool and interesting character. We get a lot from her. I love her relationship with Al. So definitely want to give a point to Brotherhood for that.
I also want to give a point to I can't remember what the other Brotherhood point I wanted. Oh, Dr. Marco. Dr. Marco is a better character in Brotherhood.
Mhm.
He's not. I think he's kind of like
He also gets a lot more screen time.
He introduces in the original. His purpose is here is how to make a philosopher's stone. Now I'm dead.
Yeah.
In Brotherhood, he has that whole. He also gets a redemption arc, so I do want to give them a point there.
Got you. Let's see here.
Do you have another one? Because I have another one.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to give a point to the original though for Wrath.
Oh yeah.
I love this
man.
demented little psycho. How he's like, I don't need a philosopher's stone to become human. I'm just going to gradually steal all of Edward Elric's body parts until I become human. I love this little.
Oh man, this
demented...
little gremlin goblin energy that he exudes is terrifying. No, Wrath in 2003 is so much fun.
I love how they use him to reveal, because Azumi's already figured it out at this point, but they use him to reveal to Ed and Al. That's how a homunculus is made.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you guys made a homunculus. And they're like,
oh,
I love
shit.
that. Point to the original for that.
A point to the original for Lust coming around and helping them defeat Sloth there at the end, and having, in my opinion, much more humanized homunculi in the 2003 version. Like, they have their own wants and goals and desires. They are not just the mindless creations of the big bad evil guy. And that creates such dynamic characters that you really don't understand one moment to the next what they're going to do until you find out who they are. So definitely point to the original for that.
I want to give another point to the original for bringing Rose back and using her as a vessel to show kind of that that horrificness of war, because in the original she does get a happy ending, and I do like that for her, but also it doesn't fit the original. You know, when they come back for to attack Lior. And I like, because she was such a interesting foil for Ed in the beginning, to come back at the end. I like that, so I'm gonna give that point to the original.
All right. I think I'm out of points to give. What about you?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to mention. Oh, we forgot to mention where we should give lots of points to Brotherhood for introducing us to Olivier Armstrong.
Olivier Louise Armstrong. Absolutely, we have to give points to the original for introducing us to that dynamite woman.
She is such a cool character about how she's like, I know that these are monsters and I don't give a shit.
I'm gonna fight them and I'm gonna beat them.
Her dynamic with Alex Armstrong is so cool. Just like they're good comparisons. What do you think about Major Armstrong between the two series?
I want to say that of all the characters, he's probably the most consistent. I mean, I don't really see much difference between the two versions.
We don't get the hilarity that is the Havoc trying to ask out his sister in Brotherhood.
Man, yeah, no, that was good.
But it is in the manga. It's like a bonus.
It's like a little bonus chapter. I will say though, maybe a bonus point for Brotherhood is that we do get a little bit of that character development from Alex, and he overcomes his fears, and he really does have this moment where he realizes that I can't hold back anymore. I have to actually, otherwise Olivier's gonna die in the battle. The battle against Sloth is a really fun fight. Let's see here.
But to add on to Armstrong, I like in Brotherhood how you actually. So it is known that, because one of the questions is, why is he still a major after he's been in the military for 10 years? And you find out, it's like, because he ran away on the battlefield in Ishbal. But you see that it's just a single scene, or it's a single panel in the manga where it's him holding a dead Ishvalan child. And you get that more than just being told Alex was too soft-hearted. You see that of he can't handle all of this. I mean,
Murder
Mustang
and
doesn't do a
genocide.
better job, but he's able to hold himself together, whereas Alex is just too soft-hearted to hold himself together.
I think this one is in Brotherhood, but it's not in the original, but where Alex forms that giant wall to prevent the Ishvalans from escaping while they're all being butchered by either Kimberly or Mustang, I forget which. And she shows the face of Alex as he is like absolutely having a mental breakdown, knowing that he has to keep that wall up. But hearing the screams of everybody dying on the other side of it, man, like it's heartbreaking. You could see why that guy would be like, I'm done. I'm leaving. I'm deserting. I don't even care what you do to me at this point.
So let's tally up our points. Just kidding. I wasn't keeping tallies because this is our podcast and like whose line is it anyway? Everything is made up and points don't matter. Because it probably was clear of my personal bias. Full Metal Alchemist 2003 is my favorite anime of all time. I still have, and it may be my nostalgia goggles that I got on there, but it is just my preferred of the two series. However, for me personally, it is like saying, I think Arthur brings this up at the beginning of episode 1 of this topic, is that the original is a 9.8 out of 10, whereas Brotherhood is a 9.75 out of 10. So it's
they're both fantastic series. Don't take us to be like, this one is clearly better than the other one. At this level of fidelity, it comes down to personal taste. I'll tell you this. I like character-driven dramas. I like, complex characters and stories that really, dive in deep. Is like, what does it mean to be this person? And because of that, I like 2003's version better. But I'll tell you which of the two am I going to go back and rewatch because I really want to rewatch a cool story that has a happy ending where everything gets tied up. Then I'll that's Brotherhood.
right.
The one that I'm going to rewatch more, it's going to be Brotherhood. But the story that I think and the characters that I think are better written and better made, it's going to be the 2003 version.
So for me, it's if the original Full Metal is my favorite anime of all time, Brotherhood is number 2. I mean, it's I am a diehard Full Metal fan. Like I said, I have my encyclopedic knowledge of Full Metal. There's only one show, and we will talk about it in the next episode, that I probably know better than Full Metal Alchemist. But here is kind of what I've figured out between talking to other people who have seen both series and, which is the better series. If you like action-driven adventures, if you like shonen, you are going to like Brotherhood more.
You are.
Just because that is more of that type of series. If you like Arthur said, character dramas, if you like thrillers and if you like horrors
and mysteries,
you'll like the original better. Though I will say one of the most horrific scenes in both is seeing Gluttony's true form and how he's an eldritch
Gluttony
abomination.
and Envy just turning into genuine Lovecraftian nightmares in Brotherhood is unsettling. Like, that belongs in 03. That does not belong in Brotherhood.
So if somebody in the comments below wants to actually tally up the points that we gave, I would love to see it. I might tally them up at some point and, put something on the screen for what it actually is. That is just my personal preference. It does not mean anybody else is right or wrong. That is just, again, my own personal opinion on the subject.
And if you have your own personal opinion, drop it in the comments. We definitely want to see and engage with y'all. If you like one over the other, if you think that we maybe missed the mark on some of our opinions, let us know. Let's start up a conversation in the comment section.
Was there something that we didn't talk about that we should have that was a difference, or that one series or the other did better, or there was something in a particular series that we didn't mention? Leave us a comment below. Please tune in next time for our next episode of our podcast, where we might have a little bit more finality in what we talk about. But at this point, I am Ravah. This is my co-host Arthur, and
Hello.
The court is adjourned.
Thank you.